Welcome to the Commodities Corner. Uranium is a heavy metal element required to produce fuel that powers nuclear power plants globally. After some refining, the end product is uranium oxide concentrate, more commonly known as yellow cake. Yellow cake then goes through additional processing before it is finally turned into nuclear fuel. Kazakhstan and Canada are the two largest producers in the world. Other, smaller producers can be found in Australia, Africa, and the US. Kazakhstan is one of the low-cost leaders in the world through their state company, Kazatomprom. Using in situ recovery mining, a method that dissolves minerals into a liquid form for easier recovery, Kazakhstan has gone from producing almost no uranium in 1997 to being the world's largest producer today. In Canada, Cameco is the second largest producing company in the world, with conventional high-grade underground mines coming from the Athabasca Basin in northern Saskatchewan. Uranium has been, and by most accounts, continues to be in a very long and painful bear market. In 2007, the uranium spot price was $100. In 2018, it was below $20. But there is potentially a glowing outlook ahead for the uranium industry. Years of oversupply are quickly coming to an end. Demand is finally recovering after years of low growth. Japanese plants are slowly restarting production, and China is approving new builds. India and Russia are rapidly expanding their nuclear energy capacity. Many developed countries, like France, which had started shying away from nuclear, are quietly refurbishing and extending the life of their existing plants. The biggest change in the supply picture for uranium happened in early 2018 when Cameco put the largest mine in the world, the McArthur River mine, on care and maintenance due to low prices. The mine represents 18 million pounds of uranium production annually, accounting for over 10% of global uranium production. In addition, Kazatomprom postponed expansion plans at their existing mines. Supply cuts took longer than expected to arrive, as producers had mostly been protected by longer-term demand contracts. But now that these contracts are coming closer to expiration, many producers are making the painful decision to shut down production. Ultimately, the two largest producers, Kazatomprom and Cameco, understand that there are both the low-cost leaders and swing producers. It is in their interest to keep supply in check and see prices recover. Currently, most of the demand for uranium is coming from the US and Europe, but most of the growth will be coming from emerging markets. Based on reactors planned, proposed, and under construction, in the future, China is expected to have the largest nuclear capacity in the world. In fact, China is planning ahead for its uranium demand by making strategic investments in uranium mines around the world. But there are also many planned reactors in India, Russia, the Middle East, and the rest of Asia. To put things in perspective, on the demand side, we can compare the state of the nuclear industry ahead of the big bull market between 2003 and 2007 and today. In 2006, for example, there were 439 nuclear reactors with 170 reactors under construction, planned, or proposed. Today, we have 447 reactors with 54 under construction, 152 planned, and 333 proposed. Unlike many other commodities, uranium has a very long cycle, both on the demand side and the supply side. On the demand side, nuclear fuel represents a relatively small component of the overall costs of running the plant. Most of the costs are the initial investment of building the structure. Because the plants are designed to last 50 years or more, once they are running, the key is to make sure they are adequately supplied with nuclear fuel. Because of this, utilities generally like to sign long-term contracts to buy uranium. This helps producers as they are protected from short-term price movements. But in the case where the market is oversupplied, this also prolongs a bear market, as producers are protected by these long-term contracts and do not curtail production quickly enough. This leads to an excessive buildup of inventory and a longer bear market. But there is a similar phenomenon which can cause bigger bull markets as well. On the supply side, uranium mines usually go through a very long permitting process. Therefore, starting production from a new mine takes a long time. If uranium is in short supply, starting a source for new capacity takes longer than for many other commodities, and thus can prolong the shortage of material and can lead to a more sustained price increase. Many of the utilities' long-term contracts are coming up for renewal in the next several years. By now, you would have expected them to start signing new long-term contracts, but this process has been delayed because of the Section 232 petition. In January 2018, the Section 232 petition was started by the U.S. uranium industry to protect them from what they considered unfair foreign competition. They were asking the U.S. government to impose a 25% quota for domestically sourced uranium. This petition created uncertainty for the utilities since they didn't know what restrictions would be imposed on them and which long-term contracts they could enter. Earlier this year, the Trump administration decided against the petitioners and decided that quotas were not necessary. Now that the petition is out of the way, utilities can start contracting again, and this should give a boost to long-term prices. Another near-term catalyst comes from Cameco. With the McArthur River mine no longer producing, Cameco will not have enough supply to fulfill existing contracts. Cameco intends to fill the gap by buying uranium in the short-term market. This should improve short-term prices and overall sentiment. From what you might read in the press or see on TV, it would seem that the nuclear industry is dying and will eventually be replaced by renewables such as solar and wind power. But hydropower and nuclear power are the only sources of zero carbon emission energy that are not intermittent. Solar and wind, while having come a long way in the past 25 years, still require big advances in battery technology before it could be used exclusively. The batteries themselves might create environmental problems as well. For the foreseeable future, if governments are serious about reaching carbon emission goals, nuclear will likely have to be part of the mix. Many governments are reluctantly acknowledging that fact. France, for example, had initially committed to reducing nuclear power to 50% of production by 2025, and has now delayed that deadline by 10 years. Germany has also committed to shutting down all of its nuclear power by 2022, but with amongst the highest electricity prices in the world and rising emissions due to their previous nuclear shutdowns, it is unclear how they will be able to do so without missing their emission targets completely. In the United States, nuclear power plants face cheaper competition from natural gas, but many states have stepped in with legislation supporting nuclear in the face of imminent shutdown of this near zero carbon emission energy source. Finally, governments are supporting new prototypes of small modular reactors which are cheaper and safer than existing technology. With projects due to be built in the next 5 to 10 years, they could provide a renaissance to the nuclear industry.